All right, buckle up, folks, because things are about to get wild. Imagine being in the serene Mount Hua, a Taoist martial arts sect, right? Peace, discipline, meditation. Yeah, right. Not when you've got these third class disciples living through their own personal soap opera, courtesy of the second class bullies. So these third class disciples are basically having a really bad day. They told me that when I walk on the mountain, I need to keep my knees straight. One guy grumbles, like, are they in the military or a modeling school? Another one pipes up, I was told that if I wanted water, I had to ask permission first. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, here comes the kicker. Ah, fuck, they're acting so cheap and dirty. Yep, these second class disciples, seasoned warriors, supposedly, are using their seniority to basically torment their juniors. It's like high school all over again, except with swords and martial arts instead of wedgies and spitballs. The third class disciples? They're losing it. I'd rather take a beating, Joe Gull says. Clearly, he's the guy who thinks throwing hands is always a better option than chores. Classic Joe. But Yoon Jong, being the voice of reason, or maybe just the least crazy of the group, sighs, there's nothing that says they can't do this. Great. Even the rules are screwing them over. These rules are so old, Moses probably took notes on them before Mount Hua was even a thing. To top it off, they're making up absurd commands like never let go of your sword, even in the bathroom. Seriously, folks, who's bringing a sword to take a dump? These guys might as well be holding them in their sleep, like medieval teddy bears. One disciple even laments, I was told to hold it in my hand when I eat. Honestly, what's next? Brushing their teeth with the sword. Now, you'd think someone would step up and be like, guys, enough's enough. But no. The frustration just boils over. These poor third classers can't eat, sleep, or train without getting nitpicked to death. They're on the verge of snapping, and they're ready to start throwing punches. But Yoonjong? He's still trying to keep the peace, bless him. Then there's Chung Myung, the man, the myth, the absolute madman, lounging in his chair while chaos brews around him. Yoonjong, poor dude, looks at Chung Myung and says, shouldn't we do something? Chung Myung, barely paying attention, goes, about what? Yeah, because of course, he isn't bothered by all the drama. Yoon Jong, like the responsible class president type, tries to reason with him. Maybe just back down a little. Well, at this point, Yoon Jong realizes he picked the wrong word because Chung Myung's eyes light up like a kid who's just found out Santa's real. Sahyung, I have an even better idea. Let's destroy those bastards. And just like that, Chung Myung springs up, ready to absolutely wreck the second-class disciples. Of course, Yoon Jong freaks out because the last thing anyone needs is this lunatic causing an all-out war in the dorms. Catch him! If we don't stop him, we're all dead. What follows is the most epic struggle you could imagine. The third-class disciples tackle Chung Myung like their lives depend on it, which, to be fair, they kinda do. Joe Gul, all muscle and no patience, crushes Chung Myung to the floor. It's basically a human dogpile at this point. They're holding on to him for dear life, begging him to calm down. But Chung Myung, he's not about to go down quietly. Let go. I'm only going to smash one of them. Just one. That's still a fight, they shout back, struggling to keep this human tornado pinned down. And all the while, Chung Myung is muttering something about these bastards, doing things that we didn't even do 100 years ago. Yeah, because, he was totally there a century ago. Now, here's the kicker. Despite all this insanity, Yoon Jong knows one thing for sure. Chung Myung isn't bluffing. If anyone can wreck the second-class disciples, it's him. And as much as Yoon Jong tries to rationalize, he's got this sinking feeling that no matter how strong Baek Chon, the leader of the second class, is, he's going to get thrashed. But here comes the cold, hard truth from Yoon Jong. We've got a conference coming up soon. And this is where the real stakes kick in. If Chung Myung beats the crap out of Baek Chon now, the second class's pride would be so shattered, Baek might not even be able to perform. Chung Myung, ever the charming psychopath, goes, I won't hurt him too bad. Just enough to make it hurt without leaving marks. It's my specialty. Yeah, Yoon Jong's had enough of that kind of specialty to know how bad that could go. Still, somehow, someway, Yoon Jong convinces Chung Myung to hold off. But not without a final threat from our hero. But what if they come to me first? Well, I guess you can do whatever you want then, Yoonjong sighs, probably praying to every deity that no second-class disciple gets any ideas. And with that devilish grin, Chungmyung agrees. But deep down, everyone knows it's not a matter of if he fights them, it's when. So yeah, folks, stay tuned. It looks like things are about to explode at Mount Hua, and when Chungmyung gets loose, there's no telling how bad it's going to get. Yoonjong, feeling like he just survived a war, sighs deeply as he watches the group slowly disband. They may have held back Beast for now, but it felt more like a ticking time bomb. Chung Myung, never one to be outsmarted, is already plotting his next move. All right, I'll wait. But I'm telling you, Sahyung, if even one of them steps to me, it's game over. Yoonjong can only shake his head, probably wondering how he ended up in charge of babysitting a guy who's one good shove away from dismantling the entire hierarchy of Mount Hua. But that's not even the worst part. The real kicker? Yoonjong actually has to agree to let Chung Myung go wild if the second-class disciples come at him first. Now, if you've been paying attention, you know that means someone's going to get their ass handed to them, and it's probably going to be glorious. For now, though, everyone returns to their daily torment, which, in this case, means trying to stay out of the second-class disciples' crosshairs. Not exactly an easy task when those seniors seem hell-bent on making their lives a living hell. But here's where things get even more ridiculous. A few days pass, and tensions are higher than ever. The second-class disciples are still pulling the same nonsense, inspecting every last detail, barking orders like drill sergeants, and just generally being pains in the ass. You know it's bad when even the usually level-headed Yoonjong starts losing his patience. He's biting his tongue so hard, it's a wonder he can still speak. Just hold on. Yoonjong mutters to the other third-class disciples during their practice. The conference is soon. Let's not give them any excuse to mess with us more. Jo Gul, who's usually the first to snap, looks like he's about 2 insults away from decking the next person who tells him to straighten his robe. If this keeps up, I'm gonna lose it. I swear, I'll snap. You and me both, Yoonjong agrees, shooting a glance at Chung Myung, who, for once, looks calm. Suspiciously calm, and that's when it hits Yoonjong. Oh no, he's planning something. Of course, Chung Myung doesn't say anything. He just stands there practicing with the others, like nothing's wrong. But Yoonjong knows better. He can feel it in his gut. That mischievous glint in Chung Myung's eyes, the way he seems too relaxed, it's all wrong. It's like the quiet before the storm. And if Yoonjong's learned anything about storms, it's that you don't want to be standing outside when they hit. The moment of truth arrives later that day. The second-class disciples, smug and full of themselves as usual, decide to call a surprise inspection. They waltz into the third-class dorms like they own the place, flipping mattresses, inspecting floors, basically doing everything except wearing white gloves and a magnifying glass. This is unacceptable, one of them sneers, pointing at a tiny speck of dust that you'd need a microscope to see. Do it again. Jo Gul's knuckles crack ominously. Yoonjong grabs him by the arm before he can swing, but Jo Gul's glaring so hard he might burn holes in the walls. And then, as if this whole charade wasn't bad enough, one of the second-class disciples makes the mistake of stepping up to Chung Myung. Now remember when Yoonjong said they'd be okay as long as no one challenged Chung Myung directly? Yeah, that time has officially run out. You, the senior disciple says, pointing directly at Chung Myung. Redo your section. It's filthy. Chung Myung, still looking suspiciously calm, tilts his head. Oh, filthy, you say? Yes, the senior snaps, folding his arms. And if you don't fix it, you'll regret it. And just like that, the fuse is lit. Yoonjong and the others collectively hold their breath. Chung Myung stands up slowly, almost lazily, brushing off his robe. You know, he says, his voice still light and cheerful, I've been really patient. But you're right, maybe it is time for some regrets. The second-class disciple's smirk falters, just a little. What are you? That's all he gets to say before Chung Myung moves, faster than anyone can process. 1 second, he's standing there, all smiles, and the next, the senior is flying across the room, crashing into a wall with a dull thud. Jo Gul, Yoonjong, and the rest of the third-class disciples stand there, frozen, their jaws somewhere near the floor. Chung Myung dusts off his hands, looking utterly unbothered. Huh? Guess I am stronger than I thought. The room is dead silent for a solid 5 seconds before chaos erupts. The second-class disciples rush forward, but it's already too late. Chung Myung is a blur of motion, taking down one after another with terrifying efficiency. To be clear, he's not even really hurting them. Not seriously, anyway. It's more like he's playing a game, making sure they know who's in charge now. And the message is loud and clear. Yoonjong, watching the carnage unfold, can only groan. We're so dead. Jo-gul, on the other hand, is grinning like a maniac. You know what? I think I'm okay with this. And so, by the end of the day, the second-class disciples are left groaning in a heap, while the third-class disciples, victorious for once, stand tall, if a little terrified of their own leader. Chung Myung, as calm and collected as ever, stretches his arms and heads back to his seat like nothing even happened. Well, that was fun. I'll be in my room if anyone needs me. Yoonjong just sighs, shaking his head. This isn't over. The elders are going to kill us. Chung Myung waves a hand dismissively. Let them try. I've got it covered. And with that, the whirlwind of chaos that is Chung Myung disappears back into the dorms, leaving a very shell-shocked group of disciples behind. One thing's for sure, though. The second-class disciples are going to think twice before pulling any more power plays. Baekchan leaned in, staring intently at Baeksang as if they were plotting world domination over a cup of tea. How was it? He asked, probably expecting a story that'd make him cackle like a villain in a cheap drama. But Baeksang, ever the disappointment, just shrugged. Surprisingly, there was no reaction. No reaction? Baekchan blinked, like he was trying to process how he could be this bad at pissing people off. Is that so? Baeksang nodded. Yep, they didn't lash out, didn't even mutter a word we could use to drag them through the mud. Baekchan narrowed his eyes, visibly confused, probably thinking, wait, are these kids too zen for me? This is not the rebellious teenage angst I signed up for. See, Baekchan had this brilliant, foolproof plan. Scratch the third-class disciples a little, rile them up, watch them explode like overfilled water balloons, and then, bam, hit them with Mount Hua's prestigious sect rules. That way, he could justify punishing them without looking like a complete psycho. Genius, right? Except, apparently, these third-class disciples were surprisingly calm, which was a problem because, well, what's the fun in that? Should we apply more pressure? Baeksang asked, like a man who'd just figured out he needed a hammer instead of a screwdriver. It would be unreasonable to go beyond this. We might get blamed for causing trouble, Baekchan sighed, sounding like he'd lost the last bit of joy in his life. Damn it, how are these brats not taking the bait? Baekchan sighed like a man who just found out his Wi-Fi is down. What about the other third-class disciples? Nothing new, just, well, weird training. Baekchan tapped his cheek. Weird training? How weird are we talking? Baeksang, ever the voice of reason, cut in. Sahyung, we don't have time for this. The Sasex might catch on to what we're doing, and there's not long until the conference. Baekchan sighed again. He seemed to be sighing a lot today. Yeah, time to scoop out the porridge. Baeksang tilted his head like a confused puppy. So what's the plan? Baekchan's smile was all teeth, like a shark that just smelled blood. The problem isn't the whole lot of them, just Chung Myung. And now Baeksang smiled too, because of course, it's always easier when you just blame one guy. Right, that troublemaker has them all twisted around his finger. Baekchan nodded. Exactly, they were good kids before. Well, as good as you can be when you're swinging swords for a living. But that guy, he's the problem. Baekchan's eyes gleamed. We're just enforcing the rules. It's not personal, just business. Baeksang, bless his soul, got a little too excited. One day they'll understand. Yeah, right. Because what group of kids doesn't appreciate being pushed around for their own good? As the two bonded over their evil plan, the door creaked open. Creak! Cue dramatic entrance. Chung Myung popped his head out, scanning the area like he was checking for ghosts. Nobody's here? He stepped out, looking up at the sky with the expression of a man who's just realized he's been out of snacks for 2 days. My Sahyung, are you watching? He groaned to the heavens. If this were a K-drama, we'd have a slow, tear-jerking flashback of his dead mentor at this point. What? Imagine his Sahyung's voice, already irritated like Chung Myung had interrupted his eternal afterlife nap. Yeah, don't get mad already. Chung Myung snapped back to his imaginary Sahyung. I haven't even finished talking. Listen to me for once. Chung Myung's face twisted in agony. I'm going through all this crap because of some airhead who's probably spinning in his grave right now. Again, Sahyung didn't respond. The dead are conveniently quiet that way. And that's not all. There's that woman who's always hanging around. And that guy who's basically a parasite, spewing nonsense about old sect rules. I've never even heard of half that crap. At this point, I'd rather just die and be done with these fools. Chung Myung continued his rant, but the sky wasn't going to give him any sympathy. Nor would his Sahyung, who had probably long checked out of this conversation. Why did I act like that? Ugh. He sighed, his eyes watering up as if he was 2 seconds away from a full-on sob fest. It dawned on him. This must be why Sahyung didn't get married. He probably knew he'd have to deal with someone like me. Sorry, Sahyung. Shaking his head, Chung Myung marched out of the sect grounds, muttering to himself like an old man complaining about the price of vegetables. He passed the gate, where there weren't even any guards. After all, why guard a sect that no one wanted to visit? Oh, but they'll come now that I saved this sinking ship, he grumbled. These ungrateful brats don't even say thanks. He glared at the ground like he could punch it into submission. And then, like a horror story, Chung Myung. Ack! He jumped, flailing like someone who had just seen a ghost. But no, it was worse. It was Yu Yisol, the woman who had made it her life's mission to stalk him like a ninja. He hadn't sensed her at all. Could you, not sneak up on people like that? He barked, clutching his chest. Yu Yisol, of course, didn't care. She just stared, her hand reaching out, probably to drag him back into whatever hell she had planned for him next. And that, folks, is how our hero's day was going. Welcome to Chung Myung's world, where he can't even get 5 minutes of peace without some unholy interruption. Yu Yisol, with her ever-present poker face, stood there, hand outstretched like she was about to either help him up or drag him into the underworld. Chung Myung wasn't sure which. Announce yourself first, for heaven's sake, Chung Myung shouted, throwing his hands in the air. You can't just pop up like that. Ever heard of personal space? Yu Yisol, completely unfazed by his outburst, stared at him with her usual deadpan expression, as if silently saying, I'll haunt you whether you like it or not. Chung Myung groaned. He was too tired for this. I swear, you're more terrifying than any demon I've faced. Yu Yisol just blinked. This woman didn't say much, but when she did, it was like she was passing judgment from the heavens themselves. And what was worse, she kept showing up unannounced, like a ghost you couldn't exorcise. It didn't matter how good Chung Myung's senses were, Yu Yisol had a way of sneaking up on him that defied all logic. She was like a ninja crossed with a cat, always watching, waiting, silently judging. But Chung Myung wasn't one to be scared off. He glared right back at her, rubbing his temples as if fighting off a migraine. Can't I have one normal day? Chung Myung sighed, deciding to just roll with it. What do you want? Yu Yisol tilted her head slightly, still not saying a word. Her silence was louder than most people's shouting. Of course, no answer. Why do I even bother? Chung Myung muttered to himself. Let me guess, you're here to train with me, right? Yu Yisol's expression didn't change. She just stood there waiting for him to move, like some sort of immovable statue. Chung Myung sighed. This is my life now. Fine, I get it. Let's go, he grumbled, starting to walk again, but making sure to keep an eye on her. He wasn't about to let her sneak up on him again. No way. Once was enough. As they made their way up to a new training spot, Chung Myung couldn't help but think about the Southern Edge sect. Now, those guys were a real pain in the butt. Every time he thought about them, his blood pressure skyrocketed. Baekchan and his lackeys were annoying, sure, but the Southern Edge sect? That was a whole different level of I want to strangle you. If I ever get my hands on those bastards, I swear. Chung Myung's fist clenched at the thought. No, I need to stay calm. Conference first, murder later. Yu Yisol walked silently beside him, not even a hint of judgment or curiosity on her face. It was almost unnerving how she never reacted to anything, like she'd heard his murder fantasies 1,000 times before. They reached the top of the peak, and Chung Myung finally let out a long breath. All right, let's get this over with. He drew his sword and looked around, making sure no one was hiding behind a bush, waiting to ambush him. You could never be too careful when Bak Chan's lackeys were involved. Yu Yisel drew her sword as well, her movements as smooth and silent as ever. "Let's do this quick," Chung Myung said. "I've got better things to do than play tag with Baek Chan's goons all day." Yu Yisel gave him a nod, her face still unreadable. Seriously, was this woman ever not in calm, silent mode? They began sparring, and of course, Yu Yisol was good, really good. But that didn't stop Chung Myung from complaining the whole time. "Why do I have to be the one dealing with all this crap?" he muttered, dodging one of her attacks. "I mean, I saved Mount Hua, right? I should be getting treated like a hero. Instead, I'm out here sparring with Miss I Never Speak and dodging disciples who want to either kill me or follow me around like lost puppies." Yu Yisol's sword came dangerously close to his neck, but Chung Myung dodged it at the last second. "Whoa, easy there. I still need my head," he barked, taking a step back. "You know, for all my brilliance and good looks." Yu Yisol, of course, didn't respond. She just kept swinging her sword, calm as ever. Chung Myung sighed again. "This is my life now, isn't it? Training with a mute assassin and plotting the downfall of the Southern Edge sect. Great, just great." As the sun began to set, their training finally came to an end. Chung Myung wiped the sweat from his forehead, panting slightly. "Okay, that's enough for today." Yu Yisol sheathed her sword with the same eerie calmness she always had, giving him a small nod before turning to leave. Yeah, you too," Chung Myung called after her. "Don't sneak up on me tomorrow either." But of course, Yu Yisol was already gone, disappearing into the shadows like the ninja ghost she was. Chung Myung groaned, dragging a hand down his face. "I need a vacation, or at least a strong drink." He glanced up at the now darkening sky, wondering if his Sayoung was laughing at him from wherever he was. "I swear, I'm doing my best, Sayoung. But these people are testing me." With a final sigh, Chung Myung turned and started making his way back to the sect. Another day, another round of headaches. Episode 83. Fight? You're so done now, 3. "You should call me Sago-1, I am your Sago," Yu Yisol declared, her voice flat, as if she were announcing the weather. Chung Myung raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "So what? You need to respect your seniors," she replied, unfazed. "Forget that," Chung Myung thought to himself. "You're more like a ghost than a senior." He sighed deeply, frustration bubbling up. Honestly, this woman had the presence of a half-burnt incense stick. How was she even alive? Was she floating around on autopilot? The world sure was a big place, full of strange people, but this was pushing the limits of his patience. Now, Chung Myung was no slouch when it came to sensing people's presence. His chi detecting skills were sharper than a dagger, but trying to keep track of her? It was like trying to grab mist with chopsticks. "Just why are you following me like this?" he asked, trying to keep his annoyance in check. "Is that how you should ask?" she said, staring at him coldly. "Senior," Chung Myung grumbled, the word tasting like vinegar on his tongue. Ah, if his Sayoungs could see him now, they'd be rolling on the floor, laughing so hard they might choke. Hell, they'd probably clap till their hands bled at the sight of him being forced to speak respectfully to this girl who was young enough to be his disciple's granddaughter. Would the world really fall apart if I just ignored these stupid rules? No, you idiot. The world will just laugh harder. Chung Myung took a deep breath. There was no use fighting it. "So, why? Why do you keep following me?" he asked again, his tone sharper now. Yu Yisol tilted her head, pretending not to understand. "Senior," Chung Myung muttered again, fighting back a scream of frustration. Yu Yisol raised an eyebrow in what might have been discontent. It almost looked like she was trying to intimidate him, but honestly, she just looked like a kid pouting because someone took her candy. "She's not cute," Chung Myung reassured himself. "I'm just old." It was true what Joe Gul and the other third-class disciples said. She was a beauty. If only she wasn't so stone-cold all the time, she'd probably have men lining up around the block. But no, she had the emotional range of a brick wall, and that was coming from someone who spent most of his past life beating up walls. What an unfair world. Yu Yisol's gaze turned serious, breaking Chung Myung's train of thought. "That sword," she said, her eyes narrowing, "the one that creates plum blossoms. I have no idea what you're talking about." He shrugged, playing dumb. There was no way he was going to let her drag him into this. But Yu Yisol wasn't backing down. Teach me. Me and go? Chung Myung blinked. What did she just say? Teach me, she repeated, her tone insistent. Chung Myung squinted at her, the pieces finally coming together. Is that why she's been following me? This girl has been tailing me for days, and it's all because she wants to learn that? You know what it... No, I don't know what you're talking about, he said, backpedaling quickly. I'll tell the Sasuks, she threatened, her voice dead serious. Go ahead. It'll be fun if they believe you, he retorted, rubbing his nose and waving dismissively. Let's see how well that goes. What would the sect leader even say? Ha ha. It seems like our dear Yu Yasil has gone a bit loopy in her closed room training. We should send for a good physician. Yeah, she'd be lucky if they didn't throw her out of the room. Teach me, and I won't tell anyone. Yu Yisul said, doubling down. I'm telling you, I don't care who you tell, he replied, grinning. So, stop interfering with other people's training and go away. Seriously, because of you, I haven't had a moment's peace. Yu Yisul's gaze hardened. You aren't going to teach me? Nope. She took a step closer. Then there's nothing I can do. Shing! Yu Yisul unsheathed her sword, and Chung Myung's heart skipped a beat. Ah! What are you doing? You're not going to teach me, right? This crazy woman's lost it. Who the hell pulls a sword because someone won't give them a lesson? What kind of psycho logic is that? It's because you're stronger than me, Yu Yisul replied with a straight face. Huh? Well, yeah, sure, but still. What kind of reasoning was that? Wait. No Sago should be attacking their Sage with a real sword. Because you can handle it, she said, as if that excused her from attempted murder. Why are you so confident in me? Chung Myung yelled, dodging her strikes. Yu Yisul wasn't listening. She advanced with her sword, elegant yet deadly, as if trying to teach him some kind of lesson. This girl was unhinged. No wonder the other Baek disciples kept their distance from her. Hell, if someone tried to stab me every time I said no, I'd avoid them too. Chung Myung danced around her strikes, frustration boiling over. I said stop! It's Sago, she corrected, her eyes flashing. What kind of Sago tries to kill her junior? What is wrong with your head? He barely dodged another strike. My ancestors must be laughing at me right now, Chung Myung thought bitterly. But then, something shifted. Yu Yisul's movements changed, becoming more refined, more enlightened. Is she figuring it out mid-fight? Damn it, Jogul could never do that. Just as Yu Yisul's sword started to deviate from the correct path, Chung Myung stepped in. With precise taps from his wooden sword, he guided hers back on track. Not there. Over here? No, not that way. Here. And just as he was about to fix her swing one last time, "What are you doing, you bastard?" Baekchon shouted again, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Chung Myung's expression was a perfect mix of disbelief and irritation. What am I doing? What about her? She's the one swinging a sword at me, like we're in some kind of life or death duel. Baekchon glanced at Yu Yisol, then back at Chung Myung. Why is she attacking you? Chung Myung threw up his hands, exasperated. Because I wouldn't teach her a sword technique. Apparently, that's a valid reason for attempted murder these days. Baekchon blinked, clearly struggling to process the situation. Wait, she's trying to kill you because you wouldn't give her a lesson? Yes. Chung Myung shouted, his frustration spilling over. This crazy woman thinks that pulling a sword on someone is a normal way to negotiate. Yu Yisol, who had been calmly observing their exchange, chimed in. It's because he's stronger than me. I need to be properly educated. Bak Chun looked from Yu Yisol to Chung Myung again, his face a picture of pure confusion. What kind of logic is that? Thank you, Chung Myung exclaimed, relieved that someone else was finally acknowledging how insane this was. Before Bak Chun could even think of responding, Yu Yisol stepped forward, her sword still aimed at Chung Myung. I'm coming again. Wait, don't come. Seriously, just stop already. Chung Myung's voice reached a new pitch of desperation as he hopped back, just narrowly avoiding another strike from Yu Yisol's blade. Bak Chun rushed between the two, trying to act as a mediator. All right, enough. What's going on here? Yu Yisol pointed her sword at Chung Myung, her face as cold and expressionless as ever. He has the plum blossom sword technique. I want him to teach me. Bakchon's eyes widened, and he slowly turned to look at Chung Myung. Plum Blossom Sword? Oh no, don't you start too. Chung Myung groaned, holding his head in his hands. I already told her. I don't know what she's talking about. Yu Yisol, not willing to back down, took another step forward, her sword still raised. Teach me. All right. All right. Fine. Chung Myung snapped, clearly reaching the end of his patience. I'll teach you. Just put the damn sword away before you accidentally stab someone. Like me. Yu Yisol lowered her sword, looking slightly satisfied with herself. Good. I'll see you tomorrow morning. She sheathed her weapon and calmly walked away, leaving both Baekchon and Chung Myung standing there, mouths agape. Did she just say tomorrow morning? Baekchon asked, his voice incredulous. Chung Myung nodded weakly. Yeah. Apparently, I've just agreed to some kind of crazy private lesson. Baekchon patted him on the shoulder. Good luck with that. Chung Myung sighed, looking up at the darkening sky. You know, I thought being reborn would be different. But nope, here I am again, dealing with lunatics. Baekchon raised an eyebrow. You sound like you've been through this before. Chung Myung gave him a deadpan look. You have no idea. As Baekchon walked away, still shaking his head in disbelief, Chung Myung muttered to himself, Why can't I just live a peaceful life? Is that really too much to ask? And so, Chung Myung found himself with an unwanted student, a crazy one at that, all because of the plum blossom sword technique. Tomorrow morning was shaping up to be a disaster. Episode 84, Fight? You're so done now. 4. You bastard! What are you doing? Baekchon shouted, charging toward Chung Myung with the kind of speed that could scare off an Olympic sprinter. Chung Myung looked up at the sky with a soulless face. Ha! Oh dear, my poor fate. As Baekchon lunged, sword drawn and all, Chung Myung had a moment of realization. Wait, why the hell does he also have a real sword? Seriously, who's responsible for handing these kids real swords? This is like giving a toddler a flamethrower. If they unsheath those things and someone loses a limb, I'm gonna need a lawyer. But before he could finish that thought, Baekchon's sword, now wrapped in a deep blue and black chi that looked suspiciously like it came straight from a comic book, was flying toward him. Aimed directly at his shoulder, no less. Good aim. But the after effects of that sword chi are gonna kill me anyway. You crazy bastard! Chung Myung yelled, kicking the sword away like it was a stray dog. Kang! The sound echoed like a bad DJ dropping the bass, and Baekchon was sent tumbling backward, looking as bewildered as a cat in a bathtub. He scrambled to his feet, alternating between Chung Myung and his sword like he was stuck in a bad rom-com. Ch! Chung Myung clicked his tongue, glancing over at Yu Yisol, who was still lost in her trance. Thank goodness, I was starting to think I'd have to give her a wake-up call. She's fine? He mumbled, raising an eyebrow. Normally, a racket like that would rouse a person faster than coffee on a Monday morning. But Yu Yisol was still entranced, swinging her sword like she was at a very intense sword dance party. Slow. She's too slow. But hey, who doesn't love a good show? Chung Myung couldn't help but admire her. It's not every day you see someone drop into enlightenment while fighting. Bastard! What are you doing? Don't you know how important enlightenment is for a warrior? Baekchon yelled, still fuming. Right, and you attacked me while knowing that? Chung Myung retorted, eyes wide like he just discovered his favorite snack on sale. Touching someone in a trance. You really don't have a lick of common sense, do you? You ruthless brat. Baekchon shouted, pointing accusingly at Chung Myung. Chung Myung took a deep breath, trying not to scream into a pillow. No, you idiot. I didn't mess with her. I helped guide her. But how would you know that? It's my fault. I'm the sinner here. If you knew how important a trance was, then why did you draw your sword and attack? Chung Myung fired back. What? What if your sword had gone toward Sago and hurt her? If you hadn't counterattacked, then I should just die? Chung Myung replied, raising an eyebrow. Baekchon stared at him, flustered. Are all the Baek disciples crazy? The world is usually dominated by ordinary people with a few madmen mixed in. But here, it seemed like the Baek disciples were all applying for a spot in an asylum. Are you saying I was trying to kill you? Baekchon questioned, incredulity written all over his face. It didn't look like you wanted me alive, Chung Myung shot back. It was an urgent situation. And you drew a sword! That. Baekchon's face paled. Wait a moment. How the heck did I just attack someone and escape without a scratch? Get away from Same, he shouted, the intensity in his voice rising. I won't ask what you were doing, but put your sword down and step away from her. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with me as a warrior, not your Sasuk, he declared, sounding as serious as a dog trying to catch its tail. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Chung Myung grinned, delighted. Really? Great. This was just what Chung Myung was hoping for. You bastard. Until the end. Bakchon growled, teeth gritted. Humans are funny like that. They adapt their thinking based on the situation. And right now, Bakchon was seeing red. From his perspective, an irredeemable taboo had been transgressed by his junior. But Chung Myung was thinking, if I help a little more, something amazing might happen. Yuisol was currently experiencing enlightenment, and this wasn't a routine occurrence. It was like hitting the jackpot. Who knew when she'd have another shot at this? Some people fight their entire lives without ever experiencing enlightenment, while others reach that state from eating? Yep, this was all in the hands of fate. The greatest miracle? Chung Myung was there at the right time, a skillful martial artist who knew all of Mount Hua's sword techniques. Sure, he wasn't exactly in peak condition, but still, good luck finding someone with better sword skills. But of course, why did that bastard have to show up? Intervening during someone else's trance was like playing with fire. If something went wrong, it would turn into a whole soap opera. Chung Myung glanced at Yu Yaseo. What can I do? This is your luck. It was a pity he couldn't help someone who might lead Mount Hua, but he didn't feel too bad about it since that ship had sailed. But beating the guy who made you miss the ship? That's another story. Chung Myung took a couple of steps away from Yu Yaseo and glared at Baekchon. Is this enough? More. Shh. He stepped back again. Good? Are you messing with me? Get out of here. I have no intention of letting you harm Samai. Who's the one causing harm here? You're the one causing harm. Is that any way to speak to your senior? Chung Myung stared at the sky, utterly dumbfounded. Why are these kids so obsessed with formalities? Yeah, Sasuk. The problem here is Sasuk. Baekchon's eyes narrowed. I tried to understand your arrogance, but my patience has limits, and there are people in this world who don't understand words. Wow. Baekchon frowned, puzzled. What are you trying to say? Nothing at all. Just find it funny, Chung Myung said, smirking. What is? You wouldn't understand even if I told you. 100 years had gone by, and here he was saying the same things Chung Myung used to say to his Sahyung. There's no use talking to you. It'd be faster to recite the Tao to a cow or a hen. Don't bother speaking if you can't fight. Humans are so similar. Raise your sword. Today, I will teach you what manners are, Baekchon commanded, steel in his voice. Will you be fine? Bastard. No, not that, but if you're in a hurry. As Chung Myung spoke, Baekchon's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What do you want to say? No, I'm just worried. If news got out that Sasuk fought with his Sajai, then your name might be tarnished. Baekchon laughed bitterly. After coming this far, now you want to play that card? You're wrong if you think your peers or the elders will protect you. At this moment, no one can save you. As for my punishment, I'll accept it later. Oh, I haven't heard such a manly speech in a while, Chung Myung said, nodding his head like a bobblehead. But I have a better idea. Would you like to hear it? What? Chung Myung smiled. I'm saying that even if I get beaten, I won't tell any of the elders or anyone else. Likewise, you can't run and tell anyone if you lose this battle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Baekchon regarded him carefully. What is he thinking? After a moment, he smiled. It looks like you're trying to get out of this situation, but do you think I'll care if you try these tricks? No, that's not it. Chung Myung sighed, exasperated. I'm saying we should throw away the titles of Sasuk, Sajae, and Sahyung and have a clean fight. If we promise each other that no matter what happens, I won't reach out to my seniors, I'll stand here and fight my best. The same goes for you, Sasuk. What do you think? Baekchon's subtle smile widened. All right, it seems you've got some manly qualities. If you want, then I swear I won't tell anyone what happens here. From his perspective, why not? This was a smart move. Baekchon felt a chill run down his spine at Chung Myung's wicked grin. Something about that smile screamed danger. Are you really that confident? Baekchon shot back, trying to mask his unease. You think you can take me on so easily? Chung Myung took another step closer, the atmosphere thickening with tension. Confidence? Nah, this isn't confidence, it's certainty. You've only seen the tip of the iceberg, my dear Sasek. With that, Chung Myung surged forward, closing the distance between them in an instant. The air crackled with energy as he drew upon the depths of his martial arts, his body moving fluidly like water, yet striking with the force of a raging river. Baekjeon barely had time to react. He instinctively raised his sword to block, but the force of Chung Myung's attack sent him stumbling back. Kang! The sound of metal clashing echoed, reverberating through the air. Baekjeon regained his footing and glared at Chung Myung, frustration etched on his face. What the hell? You're insane! Chung Myung laughed, a wild glint in his eye. I told you, didn't I? You brought this on yourself. Baekjeon tightened his grip on his sword, irritation boiling over. Fine, if you want to fight, then let's fight. His aura surged as he focused his energy, channeling his chi into the blade. A swirling storm of deep blue and black chi enveloped him, ready to unleash a powerful counterattack. Take this, Baekjeon shouted, swinging his sword with precision. The blade sliced through the air, sending a wave of sword chi directly at Chung Myung. But Chung Myung was already moving. With an agile leap, he dodged the attack, rolling to the side before springing back to his feet. The sheer thrill of battle ignited something primal within him. Is that all you've got? He taunted, eyes sparkling with mischief. You really need to try harder. Baekjeon's face darkened. You bastard! He lunged again, determined to show Chung Myung the true strength of Baek disciples. The two danced around each other, exchanging blows, each strike resonating with raw energy. Chung Myung felt the thrill of combat coursing through him. He thrived on the challenge, relishing each exchange as if they were the very essence of life. This is what I've been waiting for, he shouted, slashing through the air. His laughter echoing in the chaos. Baekjeon gritted his teeth, frustration and determination battling within him. He wouldn't be outdone. I won't let you get away with this. I will show you the strength of Baekjeon. With newfound resolve, Baekjeon unleashed a flurry of strikes, each one more powerful than the last. Yet, amidst the storm of steel and energy, he noticed something strange. Chung Myung wasn't just dodging, he was guiding the flow of battle. Is this? Baekjeon faltered for a moment. Chung Myung smirked, reading Baekjeon's hesitation like an open book. You're getting better, but you still have a long way to go. Let me help you. In a flash, Chung Myung shifted his stance, his movements suddenly more fluid and precise. He countered Baekjeon's sword with expert timing, each clash seeming less about brute strength and more about artistry. Baekjeon felt a surge of anger. You think this is a game? Chung Myung just chuckled, spinning away from another strike before lunging back in. Every fight is a game, and right now, I'm winning. As the duel continued, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just a fight, it was a lesson. Baekjeon began to grasp the rhythm of combat, the dance of attack and defense, and the importance of intuition. This is insane, Baekjeon exclaimed, pushing himself harder. You're toying with me. Of course, this is what it means to fight with someone at your level. Chung Myung replied, exhilarated. You think you're strong? You're just beginning. The energy crackled around them, each clash intensifying the atmosphere. It was no longer just a duel. It was a confrontation of wills, a test of strength, resolve, and the very essence of their martial spirits. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and thrill of battle, Baekjeon felt something shift within himself, a spark igniting the passion for martial arts he had buried under duty and expectation. All right then, he shouted, determination flaring in his eyes. Let's see how far I can go. With a powerful roar, he surged forward again, ignited by the adrenaline of combat and the growing realization of his own potential. He wouldn't just fight, he would rise to the challenge. And somewhere deep within, a connection formed between them, a mutual respect forged in the fires of conflict. As the duel raged on, both fighters pushed each other to the limits, the lessons of their clashes echoing long after the fight would be over. This was more than just a battle. It was a transformation, a defining moment that neither would soon forget. Bring it on, Chung Myung yelled, his spirit soaring. Let's see what you've really got, Baekjeon. And so, the fight continued. A testament to the power of camaraderie forged through rivalry, each strike a step towards their ultimate potential. Episode 85, Fight? You Are So Done Now, 5. Baekjeon felt a mix of confusion and frustration as he watched Chung Myung swagger toward him, head tilted in a way that suggested he was ready to challenge anyone. It was as if a local troublemaker had decided to confront him for no good reason. Two thoughts plagued Baekjeon. First, Chung Myung's tough guy act seemed to fit him all too well. Second, the fact that the one acting tough was himself left Baekjeon baffled. Has he really lost his senses? Even though they had agreed to put their titles aside for this match, Baekjeon couldn't shake the feeling that he had the upper hand. After all, he had spent over 15 years mastering martial arts at Mount Hua, while Chung Myung had only recently started. "What are you thinking?" Baekjeon asked, incredulous. "You can't possibly think you can take me on," Chung Myung smirked. "Not crazy at all. The real craziness is you challenging me." "What?" Baekjeon shot back, taken aback. "Why would you try to fight me if you're not insane?" Anyone familiar with Chung Myung's past would agree. He had a reputation for stirring trouble wherever he went. Chung Myung raised his hand as if about to say something profound. "Your self-indulgence knows no bounds. My hands are heavy with. Just get to the point." Baekjeon interrupted. Chung Myung shrugged, a playful grin on his face. "I usually don't like to chat before a fight, but you should listen. In a moment, you won't be able to say a word, so come at me." Baekjeon's patience wore thin. "Enough of this. I'm done talking." With that, Baekjeon drew his sword, his resolve solidifying. He had initially planned to go easy on Chung Myung, but that was out the window now. He intended to give him a lesson he wouldn't forget. Baekjeon charged forward, his sword slicing through the air with power and precision, showcasing a style that contrasted sharply with Chung Myung's more flamboyant techniques. He knew that his style was formidable and effective. As he pressed the attack, Chung Myung focused intently. He was aware of the intricacies of Baekjeon's technique and understood the weaknesses lurking beneath its surface. Interesting, he thought, realizing how both sects had influenced each other's styles over the years. "Let's see what you've got," Baekjeon shouted, his determination unshakable. Chung Myung smiled. "You mean the habit of getting outmatched? Bring it on." With their swords clashing, Chung Myung managed to slip through the gaps in Baekjeon's technique, landing a swift, surprising blow to his jaw. The impact sent Baekjeon reeling back, stunned. "Wake up!" Chung Myung taunted as he approached, a teasing glint in his eyes. Baekjeon shook his head, trying to clear the fog. "What just happened?" Chung Myung responded confidently. "Your technique has its limits. You thought it was flawless, but it's full of gaps. For everything you think you know, there's so much more to learn." Baekjeon stood frozen, disbelief washing over him. And no one found these flaws before. Of course not. They didn't see the bigger picture. But look at you, trapped in a mindset that's holding you back. Chung Myung challenged. Baekjeon's pride took a hit, but he quickly pushed it aside. "How can you know this? You've only just joined the sect." "Because I'm here to help you improve. And don't worry, I'll show you the ropes with a sword instead of just fists. It's my way of being kind." Baekjeon was astonished. "Is he serious right now?" Chung Myung continued. "Some say the sword style of Mount Hua resembles plum blossoms, but that's a misunderstanding. It aims for something deeper." He trailed off, then quickly changed gears. "But whatever, it's easier to learn through experience than just words. Here I come." Before Baekjeon could fully process the warning, Chung Myung charged at him with startling speed. Instinct took over, and Baekjeon swung his sword to defend himself, but Chung Myung dodged with ease, landing multiple quick strikes that targeted Baekjeon's legs and arms. "Thighs!" Baekjeon gasped as pain shot through him. "Wrist!" Another hit left him momentarily stunned, and he lost grip on his sword. "Head! Head! Head! Head!" The rapid-fire strikes left him reeling, and as the last blow landed, Baekjeon's vision blurred and his legs buckled beneath him. Even as darkness crept in, one thought echoed in his mind. Why did he say head 5 times when he only hit me 4? And just like that, he succumbed to the void. As Baekjeon lay on the ground, consciousness slipping away, he couldn't help but wonder if this was some sort of twisted dream. He could almost hear Chung Myung's voice echoing in his mind. "Get up! You're not done yet." but the pain from the blows coursed through him like he had just been trampled by a herd of stampeding horses. Didn't he realize this was a serious fight? After a moment, Baekchon stirred, blinking rapidly as he fought against the haze clouding his thoughts. He pushed himself up, wincing as he gingerly touched his jaw. Ugh, that hurt more than I expected. Chung Myung chuckled, an amused glint in his eyes. Welcome back. Did you enjoy your little nap? I promise to make this next round even more thrilling. Baekchon frowned, frustration bubbling up inside him. You think this is funny? Absolutely. Chung Myung replied, a smirk plastered across his face. It's not every day I get to teach someone a lesson while having fun. Baekchon gritted his teeth, summoning every ounce of pride left within him. He would not let Chung Myung's antics get the best of him. Let's see you try that again. With a surge of determination, Baekchon steadied his grip on the sword and charged once more, his movements fueled by a blend of anger and a desire to prove himself. This time, he wouldn't hold back. Chung Myung met his advance head-on, their swords clashing with a fierce intensity that sent shockwaves through the surrounding area. Each exchange of blows sent sparks flying, a testament to the strength and skill of both fighters. Now you're getting serious, Chung Myung exclaimed, clearly enjoying the challenge. Baekchon took a moment to catch his breath. This isn't just a game. I'll show you what I'm made of. Bring it on, Chung Myung grinned, his confidence unwavering. With renewed vigor, Baekchon pressed his attack, each swing of his sword more powerful than the last. He focused on the openings he had previously ignored, determined to exploit every flaw in Chung Myung's defense. But Chung Myung was quick, slipping out of range just in time. You've improved a bit since our last encounter. I can see you're finally starting to get it. Just you wait, Baekchon shouted, determination radiating from him. I won't go down that easily. Chung Myung feigned a yawn. Is that all you've got? I expected more from you. The banter only fueled Baekchon's fire, pushing him to dig deeper into his reserves. With a swift maneuver, he aimed for Chung Myung's side, hoping to catch him off guard. But with a surprising agility, Chung Myung countered, dodging the strike and responding with a powerful blow of his own. Nice try, but you'll need to be quicker than that. The battle intensified, the air crackling with energy as the two fighters danced around each other, swords clashing and feet shuffling in a rhythm that spoke of their determination. As the fight dragged on, Baekchon felt exhaustion creeping in, but he refused to let it show. He had to maintain his composure, his dignity at stake. Chung Myung, sensing his opponent's fatigue, took a step back, feigning a look of concern. Tired already? I thought you were a master of martial arts. Baekchon shot him a glare. I'm just getting started. With one final surge of adrenaline, he launched himself at Chung Myung once more, his sword slicing through the air with newfound ferocity. This time, he would not hold back. He would show Chung Myung the full extent of his training. But in a moment of unexpected clarity, Chung Myung sidestepped, allowing Baekchon to miss his target and lose his balance. Oops! Looks like you've overshot, Chung Myung teased, his laughter ringing in Baekchon's ears. That's it? No more games. Baekchon yelled, frustration boiling over. He would not let this go on any longer. He needed to reclaim his honor, to show Chung Myung that he was not to be underestimated. But just as he steadied himself, Chung Myung moved in, delivering a series of rapid, precise strikes that left Baekchon scrambling to defend himself. Each hit felt like a wake-up call, a reminder that this was not just about winning or losing, it was about growth. With one final push, Baekchon parried the last blow and found his footing. Breathing heavily, he steadied his gaze on Chung Myung. I won't give up. I'll keep coming back until I'm stronger. Chung Myung grinned, respect shining in his eyes. That's the spirit. Now you're talking like a true disciple of Mount Hua. And just like that, the battle shifted. It was no longer about winning. It was about the journey they both shared, the lessons they would learn along the way. With newfound determination, Baekchon charged once more, ready to embrace whatever came next. Episode 86. What bullshit? I am the strongest. As soon as Baekchon regained his senses, a terrible pain washed over him like a hangover after a bad night out. He could barely get up, groaning in agony as his head throbbed like a bass drum at a rock concert. How long have I been out? It felt like an eternity had passed. Upon opening his eyes, he was greeted by the dark sky. Thank the heavens! It seemed like he'd only been out for half a day at most. Ack! When he turned his head to the side, he spotted Yu Yiseol slowly wielding her sword in the distance, looking like she was in her own world, probably contemplating whether to slice an apple or a rogue disciple. Guess not much time has passed, he thought, though he knew it wasn't possible to measure time based on her focus. Enlightenment could keep a person lost in thought for days, and judging by Yu Yiseol's concentration, she might have just realized she forgot to pay her taxes. Suddenly, a voice both familiar and eerily strange echoed in his ears. Up already? Baekchon whipped his head around, and there was Chung Myung, squatting with a wooden sword draped over his shoulder, looking as casual as someone who just decided to take a break from a reality show. Flinch. Baekchon's body tensed, his instincts screaming for him to retreat. He was about to dive into the nearest bush before he calmed down enough to move back. I guess you are a bit surprised, Chung Myung said, a grin spreading across his face like he'd just pranked a classmate. Baekchon stared at him, eyes wide with shock. I lost. Actually, it was worse than that. The fight had been so embarrassing it made him wonder if he should just stick to picking daisies. He still couldn't understand how it had all gone down. The only conclusion he could come to was that he was completely outclassed. He raised a hand to touch his head, which still rang like a bell. Damn, was he trying to audition for a new sound system? Can I ask you one thing? Baekchon croaked, trying to keep his dignity intact. Sure. How are you so strong? What? Chung Myung looked at him, eyebrows raised in amusement. Interesting. Usually, after such a ridiculous loss, people spiraled into denial, kicking and screaming like a child who'd just been told no dessert after dinner. But here was Baekchon, managing to acknowledge reality quicker than a kid figuring out where the hidden candy stash was. That's not the point. It's not that I'm strong. It was Sasek that was weak. Me? Yes. Baekchon's eyes trembled. Weak? Me? Are you out of your mind? I'm weak? Yes. Baekchon staggered to his feet, glaring at Chung Myung with a look that could kill a rabid raccoon. Don't ignore me. I am Baekchon, the great Sahyung of the Baek disciples and the future leader of the Mount Hua Sect. Right. Chung Myung nodded politely, not quite sure if he was taking notes or if this was a comedy show. But that doesn't mean you aren't weak. Baekchon opened his mouth but couldn't refute that. Chung Myung raised a finger and pointed at him. A frog in the well. That's the right phrase for Sask right now. A well so narrow that even passing frogs wouldn't think of entering it, and a frog with its inflated ego trapped at the bottom. Baekchon's face distorted into a mix of confusion and rage. And I'm the frog? Yes. Me? Chung Myung grinned at him like he was revealing the punchline to a bad joke. You are the frog, Sasek. Sasek should already know that Mount Hua is on the verge of ruin. Of course. It was harsh to say on the verge of ruin, but there was no denying it had hit rock bottom, and it was Baekchon's job to resurrect Mount Hua. At least, that's what he thought until now. That's why I've been trying so hard till now, to somehow make Mount Hua. Sasek? Chung Myung looked at him like he was crazy. When did you try hard? Baekchon was at a loss for words. It doesn't seem like that to me at all. It looks like a bunch of kids left to play house, had a party, and returned to congratulate each other on a job well done. Even now, as the conference approaches, aren't you and the other Sasuks wasting time bullying the third-grade disciples? What effort? What trying hard are you doing? Baekchon went silent, realizing he had nothing to counter that. He never thought he lacked effort, but here was Chung Myung, pointing out his shortcomings like a teacher grading a test he didn't study for. It seems like Saseks don't know what hard work truly is. Doing everything you want and investing the remaining time to train isn't working hard. Sasek didn't really try till now. You just wanted to rule over a small kingdom called Mount Hua. There was no competition for you around and no one to nag you. It was a comfortable setting for you, right? Baekchon bit his lip, his pride taking hits like a piñata at a birthday party. No. Don't make such a face. I'm not criticizing Sasek, but if you refuse to compare yourself to others and want to live like a king here, you shouldn't be talking about how hard you've tried. Chung Myung sighed, like a parent who had just caught their child with their hand in the cookie jar. Have you ever had a proper fight with anyone? At best, you would have confronted the Southern Edge sect. Sasek. The Southern Edge sect may be treated like the Grim Reaper here, but they're probably near the bottom of the 10 great sects. The disciples of the other 9 great sects are soaring through the sky. Are you strong enough to fly with them? You think you're strong? Sasek? Chung Myung smirked, like a cat watching a mouse run in circles. Don't get me wrong, you frog. It isn't that I'm strong. You are weak. An alarm blared loudly in Baek Chon's head. Am I weak? He didn't want to admit it, but Chung Myung was right. Mount Hua was struggling against the Southern Edge sect, and even if he triumphed there, other sects loomed like skyscrapers on the horizon. Then does that mean there are people stronger than you in the other great sects too? What bullshit! I am the strongest! You aren't making any sense, you bastard! But it's not because I'm stronger than Sasuk. Right now, Sasuk wouldn't even be able to beat the Southern Edge sect. And don't even get me started on comparing you to the Shaolin and Wudang sects. Baek Chon bit his lip again, feeling like he was trapped in a web of truth. Chung Myung threw another sharp word at him without mercy. So, even if it wasn't me, there are plenty of people who could defeat Sasuk. Do you understand? I understand, but I don't want to understand. Who would ever want to acknowledge they were just another grain of sand in this vast world? Baek Chon's heart raced as he stepped back, his mind racing with thoughts of impending doom. Why does this feel like I'm about to get a lesson in pain? Chung Myung approached with a smile that screamed mischief. You thought you could just walk away after being so full of yourself? Oh no, my friend, we have a lot to cover tonight. Wait, can't we negotiate this? Baek Chon whimpered, imagining himself as a fish caught in a net, very much against his will. Negotiate? Ha! When was the last time a frog negotiated with a hungry snake? Chung Myung taunted, twirling his wooden sword like a kid with a new toy. Baek Chon's pride was still screaming in protest, but he knew better than to underestimate the madman in front of him. But I'm a great Cy Young. I've got authority and... I have authority? Your authority is about as useful as a chocolate teapot in a sauna. What have you done with it? Boss around some third-rate disciples? Bravo, you've achieved nothing. Baek Chon felt his face burn with embarrassment. It's not that simple. There are responsibilities. Responsibilities? Chung Myung interrupted, rolling his eyes. More like responsibilities to look good while doing nothing. Okay, I get it. I've been slacking off. Baek Chon shouted, holding up his hands in surrender. But seriously, I'm asking for your help. I want to get stronger, to save Mount Hua. Mount Hua? You mean the place that looks like it's one storm away from being a tourist trap? Chung Myung quipped, smirking. Baek Chon bit back his retort, knowing he was teetering on the edge of a cliff, and Chung Myung was more than willing to push him off. Just tell me what I need to do, he pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. First, you need to understand your limits, Chung Myung said, pacing around like a predator, sizing up its prey. And that starts with you admitting you're basically a toddler in a sword fight. Why does everyone keep calling me a toddler? Baek Chon grumbled, glaring at the ground as if it had insulted him. Because it's true. You swing that sword like you're trying to swat a fly at a picnic. Chung Myung laughed, genuinely enjoying this. But don't worry. We'll whip you into shape faster than a mother hen after a fox. What do you mean by whip me into shape? That sounds painful. Baek Chon protested, his mind conjuring images of bamboo sticks and motivational beatings. Pain is just weakness leaving the body, or in your case, weakness being dragged out screaming. Either way, it's going to be hilarious. Chung Myung clapped his hands together. Now let's get started. Baek Chon took a deep breath, bracing himself. All right, just take it easy on me, will you? Chung Myung's grin widened, and Baek Chon's heart sank. Oh, I can't promise that, but I can promise you'll be stronger by the end of this. Maybe even strong enough to beat up some of those third-rate disciples who've been annoying you. Is that really the goal here? Baek Chon asked, raising an eyebrow. To beat up the weaklings? Of course, it builds character. Chung Myung replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Now, drop and give me 20. What? I thought we were training with swords. Yeah, swords are overrated. Push-ups build the core. Now drop and give me 20, or I'll show you what real training looks like. Bakchon hesitated, glancing at the wooden sword and then back at Chung Myung, who was clearly enjoying this way too much. With a reluctant sigh, he dropped to the ground. Fine, 1, 2, 3. Chung Myung began counting loudly, adding in some exaggerated encouragement. Come on, push it out. You're a back disciple. Be strong like a mountain, or at least a hill, maybe a large rock. As Bakchon struggled through the push-ups, he couldn't help but think that perhaps, just perhaps, he had underestimated this absurd kid. Hey, you've got to at least be good at something, Chung Myung shouted. So, what's it going to be? The strongest Sahyung or the weakest frog in the well? Shut up, Bakchon barked, pushing through the last few reps. I'm going to be the strongest. Just wait. Then stop whining like a spoiled brat and start training. Chung Myung shouted back, eyes glinting with mischief. We've got a long night ahead. And so, under the dark sky, as the stars twinkled down upon them, Baekchan began the arduous journey of training under the most unpredictable and irritating master he could imagine. Next lesson, how to swing your sword without looking like you're trying to swat a fly. Chung Myung teased, and Baekchan realized he was in for the wildest ride of his life. Episode 87. What bullshit. I am the strongest. Thud! Chung Myung stretched his limbs, feeling as liberated as someone who just discovered their favorite pants fit again after a long winter. He glanced down at Baekchan, who lay sprawled on the ground like a deflated balloon, totally out cold. Ah, it feels like I've been relieved of a 10-year indigestion, he chuckled, a victorious smirk dancing on his lips as he observed Baekchan's state of complete defeat. I did my best, he added, puffing his chest like a proud rooster. Sure, he may have gone a bit overboard, but hey, no lasting injuries. Just a nice, thorough beating that would leave Baekchan nursing his bruises for about a day. Easy peasy. Right, it feels comfortable to just beat up your problems like this, Chung Myung declared, turning on his heel with all the swagger of a rock star exiting the stage. But then a thought crept in. Maybe it wasn't so comforting if it meant facing the smug Southern Edge bastards flaunting their triumphs in front of him. So shit, you shocked me. As he mused, Chung Myung nearly jumped out of his skin when Yu Yesol appeared right in front of him, squatting like a ninja ready to pounce. Ah, seriously, are you a ghost? He yelled, clutching his chest like he'd just run a marathon. Yu Yesol quirked an eyebrow. Announce yourself when you appear. Say something. I did, she shot back, rolling her eyes. When? Before. When you were beating him. Chung Myung paused, glancing at Baekchan, who looked like a corpse lying there, and then back at Yu Yesol, who was wearing a soft, almost amused smile. You saw that? He asked, half in disbelief. Yes, she replied simply. You saw everything? Only from a little while ago, she clarified, her tone giving nothing away. Are you going to kill me? He asked, half joking, half worried. No, that's a bit too far, she said, her eyes glinting dangerously. Chung Myung studied her head with a frown. What? I just thought that if I slapped the back of your head a little, you might forget what you saw. Amnesia or something. I forgot. Really? Yes. I forgot everything, he affirmed, playing along like a seasoned actor. She seemed to buy it, but the glint in her eyes suggested she wasn't done yet. Instead, teach me that sword. This woman was relentless. What was going on in her head? He'd barely escaped before, but now, with her having witnessed his glorious heroics, it was clear he'd have to switch up his tactics. Chung Myung took a deep breath. Why do you want to learn it? Yu Yesol flinched slightly at the unexpected question, her shock evident. She opened her mouth, hesitating for just a moment. I cannot tell you the reason, but I need to master that sword art. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. So, you want to learn that technique? She nodded decisively. You don't need to. Huh? It was originally Mount Hua's sword art. If you wait, you will naturally be able to learn it. Mount Hua no longer teaches it, she shot back, and that hit hard. Oh, so she recognized that the sword technique he displayed was the plum blossom sword technique, albeit his own funky variation. Yes, it's not in Mount Hua right now, he confirmed. But it'll be back soon, once the time is right. Time? Chung Myung looked at her and, instead of answering, pointed dramatically at the sky like some prophecy-spewing sage. Soon, his finger cut through the air, leaving Yu Yesol's head tilting in confusion. But then, understanding dawned on her as she watched him draw an invisible sword path, her eyes wide with realization. Yo Maiden Sword? That's right, he grinned. Yuisil gasped, recognition washing over her face. It was the technique she had poured her heart into, polished like a prized possession. But Chung Myung's version was different, not just in the movements, but fundamentally unique. Once his intricate gestures concluded, Yuisil sighed quietly. Did you understand? He asked, ready for her to confess her awe. No, I don't understand a thing, she admitted, and Chung Myung felt a mix of relief and disappointment. But before he could react, she continued, but it'll be my task to figure it out. I think I know what you are talking about. You mean that I can't begin learning it unless I reach a certain level, right? Yes, he nodded, impressed. I must lay the foundation by refining what I have now, she said, determination igniting her eyes. You are good. I know, she replied, a confident smirk gracing her lips. Chung Myung looked at her, realizing he had underestimated her intellect. She may have acted dull at times, but her mind was sharp as a blade. Right, but if you tell anyone about what happened here today, I will never teach you, he warned, his expression serious. I won't speak a word about it, she promised. Very nice. That's a good girl, he said, nodding approvingly, despite the slightly creepy undertone that slipped out. Yu Yisol narrowed her eyes. I am your senior, and you are my junior. I know. Right, good girl, he repeated, a teasing grin on his face. She clenched her sword, and he could sense her irritation bubbling. Chung Myung swiftly turned away. Then, until we meet again, Sago. Don't come to me before then. It's annoying. Excuse me. Yu Yisol reached out, trying to catch him, but he was already zooming down the mountain like a mischievous child fleeing the scene of a prank. Ah! And throw that idiot inside his room. If you leave him there, he will just die of shock when he gets up, he called back over his shoulder. Yu Yisol sighed deeply as his words echoed away. Plum blossoms. The tip of Chung Myung's sword released the plum blossoms, a sight she had never witnessed during her time in Mount Hua. She closed her eyes, envisioning the sword slicing through the air, releasing vibrant blossoms with every move. At the end of that sword was the man who held it. Father. I will certainly restore this technique. One day, I'd like to return to Mount Hua and repent for my sins with this. Yisol, come with me. There's no place better than Mount Hua. But he had never managed to make the plum blossoms bloom fully in the end. Now, right in front of her stood a person capable of making it happen. I must learn it, she whispered resolutely. At all costs. Bang! Chung Myung burst through the door of the White Plum Blossom boarding hall, only to be met with shocked gasps. Ache! He's here! Even though it was early morning, Yoonjong and Jo-gul were waiting for him, their expressions a mix of relief and dread. It seems like your training has gotten a bit too comfortable. Are you here to check up on me? Chung Myung asked cheekily. No, this place was a mess, Jo-gul exclaimed. Huh? Baekchon Sayong was missing, so the Sasuks all came and checked this place out, Yoonjong explained, shaking his head in disbelief. Those disgusting bastards. Why would they come to this dorm if Baekchon was missing? Did they think Chung Myung had kidnapped him? He had missed a golden opportunity. He could have borrowed Baekchon and given him a good old beating in secret. They're tossing accusations out without any proof. It pisses me off, he complained. Yoonjong grinned. I guess it wasn't you. Thank God. They were right, though. If they were right, then why are you getting offended? Why? Were you with Baekchon Sayong? Yoonjong asked, trying to piece it together. Yes. Wait, I guess this isn't what I think it was, right? What do you think it was? Yoonjong's smile was a bit too awkward for Chung Myung's liking. It's unlikely. I know you're a very thoughtful person, so what I am thinking about probably didn't happen, but I hope that you didn't decide to hit Sahyung's face. It was a strange feeling. Yoonjong and Jo-gul stared at the staircase where Chung Myung had disappeared. An eerie silence enveloped them, as if the air itself had grown thick with uncertainty. Can you imagine it? Yoonjong finally broke the silence. Baekchon, the most diligent and serious of us, beaten down by Chung Myung, of all people. Jo-gul nodded, still in disbelief. It's hard to wrap my head around, but if it's true, it changes everything. Right? Yoonjong's eyes sparkled with a mix of concern and excitement. If Baekchon is training harder now because of this, then maybe this was for the best. Maybe, but it could also backfire. Jo-gul frowned. What if Baekchon gets too focused on revenge? He's not the kind of person to let things go easily. True, but he also respects strength, Yoonjong replied, scratching his chin thoughtfully. If he sees that Chung Myung is serious about this, it might inspire him rather than drive him to anger. Maybe. Still, Jogul sighed, glancing at the door. I just hope we don't end up in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Chung Myung had just settled into his room, his body sprawled on the bed. A wide grin spread across his face as he thought back to the earlier confrontation. He really thought he could take me on, huh? Poor Baekchon. He kicked off his shoes and stretched his arms, feeling a surge of energy. This was exactly what he needed, a reminder that he was the strongest and that Mount Hua had potential waiting to be unlocked. As he stared at the ceiling, his thoughts drifted to Yu Yaeseol. Such a curious girl. She's different. He chuckled to himself. Maybe I should keep an eye on her. She's got that fire, and it could lead to something interesting. The next morning dawned with a bright sun casting golden rays through the windows. Yoonjong was the first to rise, heading to the training ground with a heavy heart. Today is going to be awkward, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. He expected Baekchan to be fuming with rage or plotting revenge. But when he arrived, he found a strange sight. Baekchan was training harder than ever, his face set in determination rather than anger. What's going on? Yoonjong asked, surprised. Baekchon stopped, glistening with sweat but maintaining a fierce gaze. I need to get stronger, he declared. Chung Myung showed me my limits. I can't allow that to happen again. Yoonjong's brows shot up. So you're not mad? Baekchon shook his head, the fire in his eyes unwavering. No, I respect strength, and Chung Myung, he's undeniably strong. I need to rise to that level. Wow, that's actually really mature of you, Yoonjong replied, impressed. Baekchon smiled slightly, though there was still a hardness to his expression. I'm just doing what I need to do. But it doesn't mean I won't get my revenge someday. Yoonjong couldn't help but chuckle. Guess some things never change. As the days passed, the atmosphere around the White Plum Blossom boarding hall shifted. The disciples trained with renewed vigor, inspired by Chung Myung's strength and Baekchon's determination. Chung Myung watched from a distance, a proud smile on his face. Look at them go, he exclaimed, nudging Jogul. They've got fire in their eyes. Yeah, Jogul replied, a hint of admiration in his voice. But it's still scary. It feels like they're all plotting something. Let them plot, Chung Myung grinned. The more they push themselves, the stronger we'll all become. Yoonjong, who had been listening, rolled his eyes. You just love stirring the pot, don't you? Of course. A little chaos is good for growth. Chung Myung responded cheerfully. Just wait until the conference. They'll all be blown away by how strong we've become. In the days leading up to the conference, Baekchon and the other disciples trained rigorously. Despite the camaraderie and excitement in the air, everyone felt the weight of expectations pressing down on their shoulders. But deep down, they knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. The bonds they forged through hardship and laughter would carry them through anything. As they prepared for the coming trials, one thing was certain. Mount Hua would rise once more. Episode 88, What Bullshit? I Am the Strongest. Yoonjong squinted as he scanned his surroundings. There was nothing, not a single second-class disciple in sight. Unlike yesterday, where they had been tormented like fresh meat at a barbecue, today was eerily quiet. Was it true? It's not that Yoonjong didn't trust Chung Myung's words. After all, as Jogul had said, Chung Myung was a guy who spoke nonsense but never lied. The problem was that his solutions were the kind of crazy that would make even a philosopher scratch his head. Still, it looked like he had somehow managed to solve the problem. Sahyung, it seems like Chung Myung's words were true, right? Yoonjong nodded at Jogul's observation. But seriously, could it be this simple? If we encounter problems with Sasek, are we just supposed to spar with them until they surrender? Is this a martial arts sect or a kindergarten playground? Ignoring common sense was one thing, but abandoning the rules of the sect altogether? Yet here they were, living proof that this madman's methods actually worked. What in the world is going to happen to Mount Hua in the future? Yoonjong never considered himself a grumpy figure, but after watching Chung Myung, he was starting to think that maybe being a cranky old man wasn't such a bad deal. Imagine a world where that grumpy bastard could keep everything in order. What are you thinking? I was thinking about the future of Mount Hua and how it feels to be an old man. Joe Gould was left speechless. Did he finally realize how he acts? Yoonjong sighed as he caught Joe Gould looking at him with a mix of pity and concern. The third-class disciples nearby slowly approached Yoonjong. The dorms seem a little strange today, Sahyung. I guess so. Why are they acting like this? I'm worried they're planning something worse. Right. Yoonjong looked up at the distant sky. These kids are losing it too. The thought that their Sasuk was beaten, such a concept would have been unthinkable in Mount Hua before Chung Myung arrived. Yet, like Yoonjong and Jo Gul, the third-class disciples appeared to be under the influence of Chung Myung's unconventional teachings. If this trend continued, Mount Hua might soon be filled with Chung Myung clones. Yoonjong shuddered. The thought alone was terrifying. I'm more anxious because it's quiet. Should we sneak a peek? I don't think those idiots have come to their senses yet. Doesn't it seem like they're up to something, Sahyung? Oh my God. Where did the trust between fellow sect disciples go? It's noisy. Come and get ready for training. Yes? Sajay? What's with his temper? Yoonjong sighed deeply, lamenting how his juniors were looking at him like he was an unsolved math problem. Day by day, Mount Hua was drifting away from the version Yoonjong knew. Sure, this change might not be all bad, but he honestly didn't want to witness the chaotic future that Chung Myung would create. Sahyung, did Chung Myung really beat Baekjeon Sasuk? Jo Gul whispered, trying not to let anyone else hear, and Yoonjong frowned. What are you even asking? There's no way he would lie. If it weren't for that, the seniors would still be harassing us today. No. That? Jo Gul scratched his head. I just can't wrap my head around it. No matter how strong Chung Myung is, there's still a huge difference in the amount of time he and Baekjeon Sasuk have spent studying martial arts. Yoonjong felt the same confusion. Does this make any sense at all? It made no sense whatsoever. But wasn't Chung Myung always doing things that defied reason? Then Sahyung, Chung Myung is stronger than Baekjeon, right? Why do you keep asking such obvious? Then, what about compared to the Southern Edge sect? Yoonjong fell silent. Compared to them? This was something he had never thought about. Chung Myung shouldn't be inferior to the Southern Edge sect either, right? He even defeated Senior Baekjeon. Yoonjong with a stiff face fell into deep thought. Then, during the conference this time, Gul, yes, Sahyung, if Chung Myung wins, will it make a difference? Wouldn't things change? Yoonjong shook his head. When a master expert is born in a sect, it's something to celebrate. However, a single master's reputation belongs solely to themselves. They can't do anything alone. The moment Chung Myung disappears, Mount Hua will fall back into obscurity. If we truly want to revive Mount Hua, we also need to become strong ourselves. We can't just rely on Chung Myung. We won't be able to declare Mount Hua's revival until the day arrives when the world can't ignore any random disciple from our sect. Right? But as you said, I am curious about the conference. This time will be different. What do you mean? Chung Myung. Yoonjong took a deep breath and said, will he truly become a hero that brings change to Mount Hua? Or will he be a tyrant who reigns over this small Mount Hua? Yoonjong and Jo Gul exchanged serious glances, contemplating the unpredictable nature of Chung Myung. Ah! Seriously! Get out of here! The two slowly turned their heads toward the sudden interruption. Chung Myung was shouting as he sprinted down the path. Isn't that Senior Yu? Yu Yisol was hot on Chung Myung's heels, chasing him like a cat chasing a laser pointer. Teach me! I already told you I have nothing to teach. I told you not to come, you horrible leech. The Yu Maiden Sword. Go ask Ungeum Sask. He'll teach you. Ungeum Sask is a man. The Yu Maiden Sword is a technique for women. It's a skill that Ungeum Sask can't handle. Then am I a woman? Well, am I a woman? Teach me. Ah! How do I get through to your mind? Chung Myung and Yu Yisil zipped past Yoonjong and Jo Gul, leaving them staring in bewilderment at the absurd spectacle. When did those two become such good friends? Did Senior Yu always talk this much? It seems like she's spoken more in the past few days than in her entire time at the sect. Is it even all right for that idiot to talk to Yusago like that? Well, he's always been arrogant. What you said earlier, whether he's a hero or a tyrant. Gul. Yes. Sahyung. Let's go train. Yes, Baeksang's face contorted with frustration. Sayoung, are you really going to leave it like that? Baekchan smiled, sensing the dissatisfaction in Baeksang's voice. Why are you so angry? Aren't they acting too arrogantly? Especially that one, Chung Myung. He doesn't even show a shred of remorse. Isn't it all right to punish them now? Punish? You? Him? Someone like you? Huh? Nothing. Baekchon forced himself to smile, feeling like a kid trying to hide a candy stash. Although his injuries had faded a bit, his entire body still throbbed in pain. Baekchon turned his gaze towards Chung Myung, who was sprinting away from Yu Yisol. Sneaky son of a bitch. How could he beat someone so thoroughly without leaving any marks? The more Baekchon pondered, the more absurd this guy seemed. At least he had avoided public humiliation. But he couldn't even complain about this injustice to anyone. People would treat him like a madman if he tried to confess that his junior was abusing him without any visible injuries. Or worse, they'd see him as a trash heap of a disciple with no future prospects. Of course, even if he had visible wounds, Baekchon would never admit to being beaten like a dog. Still, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Why did you suddenly tell us not to touch the third-class disciples? Baeksang. Yes, Sayoung. I just don't understand the reasoning behind it. The reasoning was simple, to have a peaceful life. Baekchan was just trying to avoid getting hit again, but he could never voice that out loud. His dignity as a senior disciple was at stake. Isn't the conference approaching? That's right. Baekchon spoke with a serious expression. I was thoughtless. Ruling over the third-class disciples is something we can do at any time. As the atmosphere in Mount Hua buzzed with anticipation, the focus shifted to the upcoming conference with the Southern Edge sect. The stakes had never been higher, and every disciple felt the weight of expectation on their shoulders. Meanwhile, in the training grounds, Chung Myung was in the midst of his typical antics, dodging Yu Yi-sol's attempts to corner him for a lesson. Her relentless pursuit had become a source of amusement for the onlookers, who couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. Come on, just teach me the Yua Maiden sword already, Yu Yi-sol exclaimed, frustration evident in her voice. Chung Myung sprinted around, his usual smugness replaced with a hint of desperation. I told you, I can't. Go ask someone else. The banter echoed through the training grounds, and Yoonjong and Jo-gul watched from a distance, bemused by the spectacle. Look at those two, Jo-gul remarked, shaking his head. When did they become such good friends? Honestly, it's absurd, Yoonjong replied. But maybe that's just how things are now. Nothing surprises me anymore. Back with Baekchan. Baekchan was still grappling with his recent humiliation at the hands of Chung Myung. He couldn't shake off the embarrassment that lingered like a shadow over his thoughts. As he observed the scene of Chung Myung evading Yu Yisol, his frustration bubbled over. Why does he have to act so carefree? Baekchan muttered to himself. Doesn't he realize the pressure we're under? Are you still sulking? Baeksang chimed in, his expression a mixture of concern and irritation. You need to let it go. The conference is what matters now. Baekchon straightened his posture, trying to regain his composure. You're right. We can't let personal grievances distract us. We need to focus on our training. The disciples gathered, ready for training. Everyone, line up, Yoonjong commanded, stepping forward. His authoritative tone caught the attention of the third-class disciples, who immediately straightened up. Today, we're going to push ourselves harder than ever. The Southern Edge sect won't go easy on us. As the training commenced, the air was thick with determination. Each disciple was aware of the significance of their efforts. With Chung Myung's unexpected strength shaking the foundation of Mount Hua, they needed to elevate their skills to match the new standard he had set. In the midst of the training, Chung Myung, still dodging Yu Yisol, paused for a moment to observe his fellow disciples. He noticed the intensity in their eyes and the way they pushed themselves during training. A sense of pride swelled within him. Look at them go, he thought, a smirk forming on his lips. This is what I wanted to see. Yu Yisol, finally managing to corner him, huffed in frustration. You're not getting away this time. Teach me, or I'll make you regret it. Chung Myung raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay, just give me a second to catch my breath. He couldn't help but chuckle at her persistence. As the sun began to set, the training session came to an end and the disciples gathered to cool down. Conversations filled the air, and while some were still nervous about the conference, there was a newfound sense of camaraderie among them. Baekcheon approached Chung Myung, who was still trying to shake off Yu Sol's grip. Chung Myung, he called out, his tone serious. Hey, if you want to spar again, I'm not interested, Chung Myung teased, a playful glint in his eyes. No, it's not that, Baekcheon replied, shaking his head. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did with the third-class disciples. Chung Myung shrugged, still grinning. Just doing what needs to be done. We're a team now, right? Baekcheon nodded, appreciating the sentiment. Just remember, we can't rely on you alone. We all have to grow stronger together. I know. Just trust me to keep things interesting, Chung Myung replied, a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. As the night enveloped Mount Hua, the disciples returned to their dorms, fatigue settling in. However, beneath the exhaustion lay an electric anticipation for the days to come. The upcoming conference was not just a challenge, it was an opportunity to prove their worth, to demonstrate how far they had come. Yoonjong sat by his window, gazing out at the stars. What will happen at the conference? He pondered, a mix of hope and apprehension swirling within him. Jo Gul, seated nearby, broke the silence. Whatever happens, we face it together. With Chung Myung around, I think we'll surprise everyone. Yoonjong smiled faintly, comforted by the thought. Yeah, together. The following day, the atmosphere in Mount Hua shifted once again. With each sunrise, the anticipation grew. The disciples trained harder, fueled by the prospect of proving themselves against the Southern Edge sect. Baekcheon, now more determined than ever, led his peers with unwavering focus. He had a new purpose, a chance to reclaim Mount Hua's honor and establish their place in the world. And as the day of the conference approached, the question lingered in the air. Would Chung Myung be the hero they needed, or would he become a tyrant, leading them down a path they could not follow? Only time would tell, and each disciple prepared for the inevitable clash of fates. Episode 89. What bullshit! I am the strongest. 4. Sect Leader. Hyunjong silently poured tea into a cup without responding, looking all zen like he's about to drop some ancient wisdom. The fragrant aroma of tea wafted through the room, probably the only thing keeping him from flipping a table right now. Whenever he felt pissed off, which was probably more often than not these days, Hyunjong made tea like this. He wasn't much of a punch-a-wall type. Instead, he brewed tea like a retired samurai. There was nothing like the sweet scent of tea to stop him from yelling, "Who the hell ruined my sect?" They will arrive today, Sect Leader. Are the preparations complete? Yes, Sect Leader. Nothing will go wrong while welcoming the Southern Edge sect. That's good to hear. Hyunjong let out a low sigh, the kind of sigh that says, I swear, if these punks embarrass me again, I'm done. At least this time, I don't have to feel embarrassed, he thought. The last visit from the Southern Edge sect was like your ex visiting your apartment right after you've had a week-long Netflix and junk food binge. Ruined buildings, sad meals, and a training hall that looked like it doubled as a chicken coop. It was bad. For Hyunjong, the prideful leader of Mount Hua, it wasn't just about being outclassed in martial arts. It was the side eye from the Southern Edge disciples that really stung. Nothing cuts deeper than some punk kid's "I'm better than you" smirk. The more I think about it, Eunam chimed in, the more I believe Chung Myung has done a great job. Well, yeah, saving a whole sect from financial ruin does tend to put you in people's good books. Hyunjong cared for Chung Myung like a proud dad, but he knew it went deeper than that. To Mount Hua, Chung Myung was like duct tape on a sinking ship, holding everything together, albeit in the most chaotic way possible. Drink, Hyunjong said, pushing the tea toward Eunam. Yes, Sect Leader. Eunam took a sip, trying to appear like he wasn't about to critique Hyunjong's tea-making skills. It's stronger, he said, trying to be diplomatic. It's been dried for a long time, and the taste seems to have faded a bit. Well-dried plum blossom leaves actually become more fragrant. Hyunjong said with the air of someone who spent way too much time researching tea instead of fixing his sect. This is something I realized after decades of drying plum blossoms. He looked at the cup like it was a metaphor for his life, which, let's be honest, it probably was. Mount Hua is the same. We've just been surviving. Barely. We talked a big game about restoring past glory, but honestly, we were hanging by a thread. Un-am, bless his worried heart, was feeling all sorts of concerned. Sect leader. But, Hyunjong added, we held on, and look at us now. Sometimes, waiting it out is the right move. No need to rush when life is already throwing rocks at your face. Un-am's expression brightened, probably thinking, hey, maybe we won't crash and burn this time. We aren't the only ones moving forward, he thought, watching Hyunjong. The old man might be gray-haired and sipping tea, but he was evolving, leveling up in life. Just like those heroes in RPGs who never actually stop grinding. Mount Hua's sect leader will bring back the glory of the past. I'd like that, Hyunjong said, his smile small but meaningful. But if it happens, it's because of the disciples, not me. Come on, sect leader, give yourself some credit, Un-am said, trying to hype him up. But Hyunjong wasn't having it. I'm just a guy who knew when to quit. If my Saiyungs hadn't left, I would have spent my days quietly reading scriptures. Trust me, this job wasn't in the cards for me. Un-am wasn't buying the self-deprecation. They left because they weren't fit to lead. You, sect leader, are the most decent and honorable person left in Mount Hua. Hyunjong smiled, which was his way of saying, okay, calm down with the compliments, buddy. So, Hyunjong said, swiftly changing the subject, what do you think about the second-class disciples? They're working hard, stabilizing their minds and bodies after training. Un-am's face darkened a bit, like someone just reminded him that his favorite sports team was about to get crushed. But sect leader, say it. Honestly, I'm a bit worried. Oh boy, here it comes. Un-am sighed like a guy watching his favorite underdog team about to face off against champions. Mount Hua's making a great comeback, but the conference outcome could ruin everything. Can our second-class disciples even compete against the Southern Edge sect? Hyunjong stayed silent because, let's be real, even he knew the odds were stacked. Mount Hua's been like that scrappy underdog in a sports movie, while the Southern Edge sect's been winning championships for years. Un-am continued, I don't want to doubt our kids, but you know how it is. The unspoken truth hung in the air like a bad smell. Mount Hua had clawed its way out of the dumpster, but Southern Edge? They were shining like new money. The gap between them wasn't just big, it was a canyon. What about the third-class disciples? Them? Un-am blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift. They're, preparing, I guess? Hyunjong nodded, the look in his eyes suggesting he knew more than he let on. What would you do if there was a mountain in front of you? Un-am paused, unsure where this was going. Was this about the kids? The sect? A metaphor about the tea? If you had to cross the mountain, what would you do? Hyunjong pressed. No path around it, no time to rest. Just you and the mountain. Un-am exhaled deeply. Honestly, I'd probably fail. And yet, you'd gain experience, Hyunjong replied with a sly smile. Next time, it'd be easier. Un-am still wasn't convinced, but he couldn't argue. Sometimes, when the boss speaks, you just nod along and hope he's right. The Mount Hua and Southern Edge Conference isn't about winning or losing. It's about growth, Hyunjong said, trying to sound all philosophical. But deep down, even he knew he was bullshitting. He needed a miracle, and unfortunately, those were in short supply these days. As Un-am left to finalize preparations, Hyunjong stared at his tea, frowning. Winning isn't important, he muttered. And then with a dry laugh, he added, yet here I am, lying to myself again. Because, let's face it, winning was all that mattered right now. And as the Southern Edge sect strolled into the small village of Hua Jingum Ryong couldn't help but smirk. This place is even smaller than I remember. Are we seriously about to fight these guys? One disciple asked, looking around at the shabby surroundings like he was too good for the place. Yeah, Jingum Ryong replied, smug as ever. But don't underestimate them. This village only exists because Mount Hua used to be a big deal. Emphasis on used to. Lee Song-baek, meanwhile, walked silently behind them, not engaging in their smug little banter. Great, he thought. Just walking into the tiger's den. Again. Because really, the only thing worse than walking into a fight you think you're going to win is realizing you might not be the one with the upper hand. Especially when that guy, Chung Myung, is still lurking around, smiling like a tiger with his eyes on you. What the hell? Jong So-han's voice echoed with annoyance. His tone suggested he just found out his favorite restaurant ran out of beef, but no, it was because of the steep mountain they were climbing. Now let's pause for a moment and appreciate this situation. Even for martial arts experts, scaling a mountain that's almost vertical would give anyone a headache. I mean, you'd think that whoever decided to set up shop here was just really into leg day. I don't understand what the hell these people thought when they built their sect in a place like this. No wonder their sect is doomed. Doomed? Well, that's a bold statement coming from someone who's literally sweating bullets just walking up to the front door. If Chung Myung were around to hear this, I'm pretty sure he'd be applauding in the background, maybe while drinking tea with a smug look on his face. The sect's location is meaningful, Jin Gumryong interrupted, clearly in need of a good eye roll. It represents a disciple's desire to sacrifice and leave behind their mundane and materialistic lives while returning to nature. You know, classic monk stuff. Sohan wasn't buying it. Mount Hua? A sect now on life support? If Wudang built this place, I'd get it, but this? The man had a point. It's like renting a rundown apartment and pretending you're living in a penthouse. At least, that's what the disciples were thinking as they rested on the way up. One second-class disciple, apparently done with the whole mountain exploration ordeal, chimed in with a complaint. After all this, we better be treated to something special. Instead, they're going to serve us grass and make us sleep in huts that barely stand. Ah, the dinner is salad dilemma. Always a disappointment. Someone else couldn't help but add, beggars wouldn't sleep there. What kind of sect is this? Worse than the Beggars Union. Well, that's a low blow. But hey, I guess the truth hurts. Jin Gumryong shrugged, remaining calm in the sea of complaints. We know you're all mad, but the elders are obsessed with Mount Hua for some reason. So, calm down. Yeah, but why are the elders so into this sect? Someone asked. Potential? Maybe? Jin Gumryong offered, but someone else snorted. If they had potential, wouldn't they have done something by now? What? They've been declining for 100 years? Sounds like they've got no potential left. Everyone seemed in agreement on that, except one guy. A lone voice cut through the cynicism. Don't underestimate Mount Hua. It was Lee Song-baek, expressionless but dead serious. His words hung in the air, the way dramatic warnings in movies usually do before things go horribly wrong. Jong So-han, being his sassy self, shot back. Like Sahyung? Silence. Song-baek wasn't going to take the bait, but Jong So-han wasn't done. Don't worry, we'll break Mount Hua and stomp whoever dared to humiliate you. Oh yeah, nothing says friendly rivalry like a vow to crush your opponents into dust. Meanwhile, Sama Sung, the elder of the Southern Edge sect, showed up, casually ascending the mountain as if he were just out for a morning stroll. Did you all forget what happened with the Unha Guild? Cue the collective groan from the disciples. Unha was the moment they all wanted to erase from their memory. Especially poor Lee Song-baek, who had taken the heat for that disaster. You'd think someone would give the guy a break by now. Sama Sung wasn't having it, though. His voice got cold, like, don't even think about screwing up again. Cold. It's enough that we were disgraced by Mount Hua once. We must not let it happen again. You should be strong enough to not just defeat Mount Hua, but obliterate them. Do you understand? Yes, Elder, came the chorus of eager-to-please disciples. But no matter how hard they tried to focus on the mission, one thing was very clear as they finally reached Mount Hua. This is hell. And then they saw the gates. Wait, what? Weren't these gates about to fall apart last time they visited? The disciples blinked as if they were seeing a mirage. Huh? What is that? Instead of a crumbling relic, they were greeted by a brand new, massive door. Someone probably thought they'd arrived at the wrong mountain, or that Mount Hua had borrowed some money from a mafia boss to get this extreme makeover. The elder's eyes narrowed. Silence. They've probably begged for money somewhere. Just because they've changed the gate doesn't mean the rest of the sect has improved. Yeah, like slapping a fancy cover on an old torn book and pretending it's good as new. But then, the gates opened, and there stood Hun Sang, Mount Hua's elder, welcoming them with a smile. You've had a tough journey. Let's head in for the banquet. Samasung wasn't in the mood for small talk. Banquet? We didn't come here to eat. It's just a welcome. Take the lead, and I'll meet the sect leader. Inside the gates, it was clear something had seriously changed. Wait, When did they rebuild all this? Disciples gawked at the shiny, brand new training hall. You could almost hear their brains malfunctioning. This is better than Southern Edge, one muttered. Better than Southern Edge? At this point, everyone was wondering if Mount Hua had a sugar daddy somewhere. But the elder wasn't amused. Doesn't it seem like a lot has changed? Sama Sung asked. Hun Sang's response was smooth. Good things have happened. Sama Seng was skeptical. You didn't steal this money, did you? I hope Mount Hua isn't involved in fraud. Hun Sang's smile faltered as his face turned red in anger. But before he could say anything, a voice broke the tension. Fuck you. Do you have a death wish? Everyone turned. And there, with a small child leading a group of exhausted disciples in training, stood Chung Myung, the human firecracker, a walking disaster, and the most terrifying small child anyone had ever seen. Sama Sung stared at him, stunned. What did you just say?